The day my own sister looked at my children and said, "Not this time. Next kid." I smiled, so she would not see my heart breaking. But what she did not know was this: my smile was the last thing she would ever get from me without a fight. Because while she was busy acting like she owned my life, my kids, and even my money, I had already found out something she thought I would never notice. My stolen ATM card was in her purse, and by the time she realized I knew, it was already too late. Let me take you back to where this started. My name is Alina, and if you looked at my life from the outside, you would think I had it together. I was a mother. I had two beautiful kids, Emma and Noah. I worked hard. I kept my home calm. I tried to be the kind of woman who did not complain too much, because life already had enough pain in it. My husband passed away 3 years ago, and since then, it had just been me and my children trying to survive one day at a time. My older sister, Brooke, was the opposite of me. Brooke was loud, sharp, and always in control. She talked like she was giving orders even when nobody asked for them. Growing up, my parents always said, "She is strong and you are soft." Back then, I thought that was a compliment. Later in life, I learned it often meant I was the one people expected to forgive everything. Brooke loved being the center of attention. She loved looking generous in front of other people. She loved saying things like, "Family is everything," when other people were watching. But behind closed doors, she could be cruel. Not always in obvious ways. Not the kind that leaves bruises. The kind that leaves you questioning yourself. She would borrow money and call it helping herself because family should not keep score. She would make promises to my kids and then cancel at the last minute. She would take things and then laugh when I asked about them, as if I was silly for noticing. I should have seen the pattern much earlier. But when you grow up with someone, when they are your sister, you keep hoping the good version of them will come back. I kept hoping Brooke would become the woman she pretended to be. Instead, she became worse. It all began with the family trip. My mother had been gone for 5 years, and every summer, our family tried to do something small in her memory. This year, Brooke announced that she was planning a special trip for the family to a lake resort 2 hours away. She said it was her treat. She said she wanted the kids to have a break. She said it would be good for all of us. And because I was tired, because I wanted my children to have one nice memory that did not hurt, I said yes. Emma, my little girl, had been excited for a whole week. She packed and repacked her tiny bag. Noah kept asking if there would be a swimming pool. They talked about it at breakfast, at dinner, before bed. To them, it was more than a trip. It was hope. The morning of the trip, I got both kids ready early. I even dressed them in matching shirts because Emma had begged me to. When we arrived at Brooke's house, she was standing outside with sunglasses on, holding her phone, acting like she was already irritated by our existence. "You're late," she said. "We're 10 minutes early," I replied. She shrugged like that was my problem. Then she looked at the kids and gave a thin smile. Cute. I should have paid attention to that smile. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of someone about to make a decision that only benefited herself. I helped the kids into the car. Brooke had rented a large SUV, and the seats were already half full with her bags, her coolers, and her own daughter, Madison. Madison was 14, moody, and just like her mother in the worst ways. She sat in the back seat with headphones in, not even looking at my kids. I asked Brooke, "Where should Emma and Noah sit?" Brooke answered without looking at me, "We'll figure it out on the way." That should have been my second warning. On the ride there, the children talked excitedly. Brooke barely responded. Every so often, she would make a tiny smile and say, like she was barely tolerating them. Then, about halfway there, she announced she wanted to stop for coffee and breakfast. "I already fed the kids," I said. She glanced at me through the mirror. "Well, some of us need real coffee." I was sitting in the passenger seat because Brooke had insisted she needed to manage the route herself. While she was ordering at the drive-thru, I noticed her phone lighting up with messages. I did not mean to look, but one message from her friend popped up on the screen. It said, "Did you get her card yet?" I felt my stomach go cold. Before I could say anything, Brooke quickly locked her screen and grabbed the coffee tray. Move, she said sharply. You're blocking me. I told myself I had read it wrong. I told myself not to start trouble on the way to a family trip. I told myself not to start trouble on the way to a family trip. That was my mistake. By the time we reached the resort, the air had turned warm and bright. The lake sparkled. The children were already laughing. I almost let myself breathe. Then Brooke checked in at the front desk and said, "Only 3 wristbands were included." I blinked. "What do you mean only 3? She turned and looked at me like I was slow. "The package covers 3 guests. That's what I paid for. You said this was a family trip." "It is," she said. "For the family members I planned for." I stared at her. "Brooke, I brought 2 kids." She sighed loudly, in that dramatic way she used when she wanted everyone around her to think she was being burdened. "Alina, don't make this difficult. There's always next time." Then she looked down at Emma and Noah and said, in the sweetest fake voice I had ever heard, "Next kid, okay? Maybe next trip." My daughter frowned. "What does that mean?" My son looked at me, confused and embarrassed. My own sister had just reduced my children to an inconvenience. I stepped closer. "You invited them." "I invited you," she said. "I never promised extra." I remember the silence after that. Not complete silence, just that sharp kind of silence that happens when a child understands enough to feel hurt, even if they do not understand all the words. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Noah looked down at his shoes. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab my children and leave right then. But before I could move, Brooke was already turning toward the staff desk, smiling and chatting like she had not just crushed 2 little hearts in front of me. That was the moment something in me changed. Not broke, changed. Because I realized this was not just about a trip. This was about power. Brooke wanted to prove she could decide who was included and who was not. She wanted to stand there and act generous while making sure I knew I depended on her. She wanted to look like the good sister, the fun aunt, the family leader, and she wanted me quiet. I swallowed my anger for the children's sake. I knelt down and touched Emma's hair. "It's okay, baby." "No, it's not," she whispered. I had no answer for that. Brooke came back with a paper map she did not need and announced that she, Madison, and maybe 1 adult were going to the pool area while the kids could hang around the cabin for a bit. "Hang around?" I repeated. She smiled. "They'll be fine." My children looked at me with those quiet little faces that ask one question without words. Are we really not wanted? I hated that Brooke had put me in a position where I had to comfort them because she had chosen to humiliate them. So I told them, "Go with me. We'll get ice cream and take a walk." Brooke's smile tightened. "Do whatever you want." And then she walked away. I took the children to the snack shop near the lake and bought them ice cream with the cash I had in my wallet. They were trying to be brave. That hurt me more than their tears would have. Emma finally asked, "Aunt Brooke does not like us, does she?" I froze. Children ask the most honest questions in the world, and they ask them at the worst times. I told her softly, "It is not about you. Some people are kind when it is easy, and mean when they want control." She looked at me like she was storing that sentence away for later. I did not know that at that very moment, Brooke was stealing something from me. Not later, not accidentally. Right then, while I was sitting with my kids, she had gone back to her room and taken my ATM card from my bag. How do I know? Because she had asked me earlier in the car whether I had enough funds for snacks if the kids got hungry, and I had opened my bag in front of her to pull out a tissue. I did not notice her hand move. I did not hear the zipper close. I only noticed later that my card was gone. At first, I thought I had misplaced it. Then, 30 minutes later, I got a notification from my banking app. A small cash withdrawal, then another, then a third. My hands started shaking. I checked the location. It was the resort gift shop. I looked up and saw Brooke walking out of the store with a new tote bag and 2 drinks, acting calm, acting normal, acting like my money belonged to her because it was convenient. I stood up so fast my chair scraped the floor. "Brooke!" I said. She looked over, unbothered. "What?" I walked toward her. "Did you use my card?" Her expression changed for half a second. Just half. That tiny flicker told me everything. Then she scoffed. "What are you talking about? My bank just sent me 3 alerts." She rolled her eyes. "Maybe you spent money and forgot. My card is missing." "Then look harder." I stared at her. She leaned in and said quietly, "Do not do this in front of the kids." That was her favorite move. Hide behind the children. Use them as a wall while she said whatever she wanted. But now I had proof. I opened my banking app again and saw another charge. At the resort cafe. Then another at the marina store. My mouth went dry. Brooke had been using my card the entire time. My own sister. While pretending to host a family trip, she was draining my account. And then I understood the other message. "Did you get her card yet?" It had been a plan. A real, deliberate plan. I do not know why I did not slap her. I think it was because my kids were standing nearby, and for them, I did not want to become the kind of woman who answered betrayal with chaos. So instead, I became very still. Brooke noticed that stillness and mistook it for weakness. "Alina," she said in that fake patient voice, "you are overreacting. It is just money. Family helps family." I looked her in the eye and asked, "Did you lock my card?" She smiled. Not a denial. A smile. That was the answer. Yes. She had not just stolen it. She had locked it after using it, so I would not be able to stop the charges immediately. She wanted to keep spending and keep me confused until it was too late. She thought I would panic. She thought I would cry. She thought I would stand there and accept it, like I always had. But something in me had gone quiet in a new way. The kind of quiet that comes right before a storm. I told her, "Give me my card." She crossed her arms. "No." I blinked. "Brooke, this is theft." She laughed. "Oh, please, don't embarrass yourself." Then she said the words that changed everything. "You should be grateful I brought your kids at all." I went cold. My children had heard her. Emma's face crumpled. Noah stepped behind me and grabbed my shirt. And that was it. That was the final line. Not the stolen card. Not the money. Not even the humiliation. It was the way she spoke about my children like they were charity cases. Like I should be thankful she had allowed them to breathe the same air as hers. I pulled out my phone and called the bank immediately. I reported the card stolen. Brooke's face shifted when she realized I was not arguing anymore. I was acting. Then I called the resort manager and asked them to hold all new transactions associated with my name. Then I called the police non-emergency line. Brooke's eyes widened. "Alina, what are you doing?" I said, "You're about to explain why my card was used at 3 different places while you were the only one carrying my bag." She lowered her voice. "Don't you dare." I looked at my children, then back at her. "You should have thought about that before stealing from a single mother in front of her kids." By then, a resort employee was already standing nearby because the tension had become impossible to ignore. Brooke's confidence started cracking. She tried to laugh it off. "This is family drama. There is no need for police." But the bank had already flagged the card. The transactions were recorded. The timestamps matched. The gift shop camera had her face on it. The cafe receipt had her signature from the room charge mix-up. She had made one stupid mistake after another because people like Brooke always think they are smarter than everyone else. They are not. They are just louder. When the police officer arrived, Brooke went pale. And the moment he asked her to hand over the wallet, she suddenly tried a new tone. She became the victim. She said I was angry because she had excluded the kids for safety reasons. She said I was unstable since my husband died. She said I was confused and emotionally overwhelmed. I will never forget the way she said my grief like it was a weakness she could use. But the officer did not care about her performance. He asked for the card, he asked for the receipts, he asked to see her bag. And there it was. My ATM card, folded inside her purse, behind a lipstick case. She stared at it like she could not believe it had been found. But I could, because I knew my sister too well. The officer asked, "Is this yours?" Brooke opened her mouth, then closed it. I said, "No, it is mine." He looked at her. "Ma'am, you need to step aside." Her face turned red with embarrassment. Madison was standing there, staring at the ground, suddenly unable to defend her mother. The resort staff were watching. A few guests had started to notice. The same people she had spent years trying to impress were now seeing her for exactly who she was. A thief. A liar. A woman willing to use her own sister's children as props in her performance. When they finally took her statement, she kept trying to deny everything. But the evidence was too clear. The card usage, the camera footage, the stolen wallet, the false claims. Every little ugly piece of her came together in one humiliating moment. And for the first time in my life, I did not feel guilty watching her fall apart. I felt free, not happy, not victorious in some loud, flashy way, just free. My kids and I went home that evening without the trip, without the pool, without the fake family picnic Brooke had sold us. But in the car, something unexpected happened. Emma reached over and held my hand, and Noah said very softly, "Mom, I'm glad you found out." That nearly destroyed me, because children should not have to comfort their mother after adults behave like monsters. I told them, "Me too." When we got home, I canceled every card, changed every password, and cut Brooke off completely. She called me 6 times that night, then 12. Then she left a voicemail saying I had ruined everything over money. No, Brooke, you ruined everything the moment you thought my children were disposable. You ruined everything the moment you reached into my life and tried to take what was not yours. You ruined everything the moment you believed I would stay quiet forever. I did not answer her calls. I did not argue with her texts. I did not give her the emotional reaction she wanted. Instead, I protected my children. I changed the locks on my home. I made a written record of everything. I saved screenshots, bank alerts, and camera footage, and I sent one message to the whole family. Brooke stole my ATM card, tried to exclude my children from a family trip after inviting them, and then lied when confronted. I will not accept this behavior anymore. Please do not contact me on her behalf. After that, the messages started coming. Some relatives said I was too harsh. Some said, "She is still your sister." Some said, "Family fights happen." And I finally understood something important. People who benefit from your silence will always call your boundary cruel. But I was done being cruel to myself just to keep other people comfortable. Brooke lost more than money that day. She lost my trust. She lost access to my children. She lost the power she had over me. And maybe the worst part for her was this. She lost the version of me she thought she could always control. Because I was not soft anymore in the way she expected. I was still kind. I was still loving. But now I was also strong. And strong women do not let thieves sit at the family table and pretend they are generous. So yes, my sister dropped my kids from the trip. She did it with a smile. She did it with fake sweetness. She did it while pretending to be the hero of the story. But in the end, the truth came out. And the stolen ATM card she thought she could hide became the very thing that exposed her. Because sometimes the person who humiliates you in public is the same person who is quietly digging their own grave. And sometimes the quietest woman in the room is the one who will remember every detail, every lie, every stolen moment, and wait until the truth is ready to speak for itself. That day, my children learned something I wish they never had to learn so young. They learned that not every family member is safe, But they also learned something stronger. They learned that their mother would never let anyone, not even her own sister, steal their peace and call it love. The strange thing about betrayal is that the worst part doesn't always happen while it's happening. Sometimes the worst part comes later, when the house is quiet, when the children are asleep, when you're sitting alone at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee that's gone cold because you've been staring at the same spot on the wall for 20 minutes. That night, after everything at the resort, after the police took Brooke's statement and we drove home without the vacation my children had been dreaming about, I tucked Emma and Noah into bed earlier than usual. Neither of them asked for a bedtime story. That alone broke my heart. Emma hugged her stuffed rabbit tighter than she normally did. Mom? Yes, sweetheart? Did Aunt Brooke steal because she needed money? I looked at her for a long moment. Children always search for reasons because believing someone is simply cruel is almost impossible for them. I brushed a strand of hair away from her face. No, baby. Then why? I swallowed the lump in my throat. Some people don't steal because they're poor. She frowned. They steal because they believe they're entitled to things that belong to someone else. Emma stayed quiet for several seconds. Then she whispered something I still remember word for word. I don't want to become that kind of person. I kissed her forehead. You never will. After the kids fell asleep, I opened my laptop. My bank had already sent an email confirming that my card had been permanently blocked. The disputed transactions were listed one after another. Gift shop, coffee shop, marina store, souvenir boutique, ice cream stand. $112, $48, $86, $29. It wasn't thousands. It didn't have to be. Every single transaction represented something much bigger than money. Each swipe was a decision, a choice. She had looked at my name on that card and used it anyway. At around 11 that night, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered carefully. Hello? A woman cleared her throat. This is Officer Ramirez from the county department. My stomach tightened. I wanted to update you. I took a deep breath. Okay. We reviewed the initial security footage from the resort. I closed my eyes. And there are multiple camera angles showing your sister making purchases using your ATM card. No surprise. But hearing someone else say it made it real. The footage also shows her removing something from your handbag while you were helping your children outside. For a second, I couldn't speak. Not because I didn't believe it, because I had wanted to believe there had been some misunderstanding, even after everything. A tiny part of me still wanted my sister to have one explanation that made sense. There wasn't one. Officer Ramirez continued. We'll be forwarding everything to the district attorney for review. I thanked her quietly before ending the call. Then I cried. Not loud, not dramatically. Just the kind of crying that comes when hope finally gives up. The next morning I expected guilt. Instead, I felt peaceful. It was unfamiliar. For years I had lived in a constant state of preparing for Brooke's next disappointment. Now, there was nothing left to prepare for. The decision had already been made. She was no longer part of our lives. Around breakfast, Noah pushed his cereal bowl away. Mom? Yeah? Can we still have a vacation? I smiled, sadly. I don't know, buddy. He thought for a second. We don't need a big one. Emma joined in. We could just go to the lake near Grandma's old house. I laughed softly. Children really do understand what adults forget. They weren't asking for luxury. They wanted memories. That afternoon, my phone exploded. Brooke had apparently started calling everyone in the family. By lunchtime, I had received 14 text messages. Most of them started exactly the same way. You know how Brooke is. I hated that sentence. Because everyone who said it believed it excused everything. One cousin wrote, "She's stubborn, but she's your sister." An aunt wrote, "Family shouldn't involve the police." Another relative said, "Maybe she only borrowed the card." Borrowed? People borrow things by asking. Thieves don't ask. Then my uncle called. He had always been fair. Alina. Hi. I just wanted to hear your side. Finally, someone willing to ask instead of assume. So I told him everything. Every detail. The invitation, the trip, the children, the ATM card, the security footage, the police. He stayed silent until I finished. Finally, he sighed. I've defended Brooke for 30 years. I waited. I don't think I can anymore. Those words meant more to me than he probably realized. Someone had finally seen what I'd been living with my entire life. 3 days later, another surprise arrived. Certified mail. From Brooke. Inside was a letter. Not an apology. A demande. She wanted me to withdraw my complaint. She claimed I was destroying the family. She claimed she had been under emotional stress. Then she wrote something that actually made me laugh. You owe me for everything I've done for you over the years. I read that sentence 5 times. Then I folded the letter, placed it back into the envelope, and handed it directly to my attorney. Because yes, after everything, I had hired one, not because I wanted revenge, because I wanted peace. And peace sometimes requires paperwork. The following weekend, Emma asked if we could bake cookies. We spent the afternoon making chocolate chip cookies that looked nothing like the recipe. Some were burned. Some were too soft. Noah accidentally dropped flour across the entire kitchen. For the first time in weeks, the house sounded happy. I realized something while watching my children laugh. Brooke had always believed she was the center of our family. She wasn't. Love was. And once the manipulation disappeared, love finally had room to breathe. 2 weeks later, my attorney called. We've received discovery. What does that mean? It means your sister's attorney submitted documents. I leaned back in my chair. And there are text messages. My heart skipped. What kind? The ones between your sister and her friend. The very same friend whose message I'd accidentally seen on the drive. My attorney continued. They're not good. I asked quietly. Can you read them? He hesitated. Then he did. She'll never notice if I use it for the weekend. Another message. She's too soft to call the cops. Then another. A week passed. Then another. Life slowly settled into something that almost felt normal. Not because the pain disappeared, but because pain has a strange way of becoming quieter when you stop feeding it. Every morning, I packed lunches for Emma and Noah. Every afternoon, I picked them up from school. Every evening, we ate dinner together, talked about homework, laughed over silly jokes, and tried to rebuild the little world that had been shaken by someone who was supposed to protect it. I thought the worst was behind us. I was wrong. Because people like Brooke rarely accept consequences quietly. They don't apologize. They look for someone else to blame. It started on a Tuesday morning. I had just dropped the kids off at school when my phone buzzed. It was a message from one of the mothers in Emma's class. Hey, I didn't want to believe it, but Brooke was at the school this morning telling parents you're making false accusations against her. I thought you should know. For a second, I just stared at the screen. She had gone to my children's school, not to see them, not to apologize, to damage my reputation. I felt sick. There are lines decent people don't cross. Children's schools are one of them. I drove straight to the principal's office. The principal, Mrs. Carter, welcomed me with a concerned expression. I'm glad you came. You know? She nodded. Your sister introduced herself as your closest family member. Of course she did. She claimed you're emotionally unstable and that she was worried about your children. I closed my eyes. Exactly the same story she had told the police. Mrs. Carter continued. But something didn't feel right. What happened? She kept trying to convince us that your children would be better off spending more time with her. That sent a chill through my body. Not because I thought anyone would believe Brooke. Because I suddenly understood what she was doing. She wasn't trying to defend herself. She was trying to punish me. If she couldn't control me, she would try to control how people saw me. Mrs. Carter handed me a visitor log. There are security cameras throughout the office. I looked at her. If authorities need the footage, we'll cooperate. I nearly cried with relief. For once, someone had chosen facts over family pressure. That afternoon, my attorney wasn't surprised. This is called retaliation. Can she do that? She can try. He paused. But every time she lies publicly after the incident, she's making your case stronger. I hadn't thought of that. Brooke believed every move she made gave her more control. In reality, she was leaving footprints everywhere. 3 days later, another surprise arrived. This time, it was my father. We hadn't been particularly close since Mom passed away. Mostly because Brooke had always positioned herself as the daughter who handled everything. Dad slowly became dependent on her version of events. He knocked quietly. When I opened the door, he looked older than I remembered. Tired? I asked gently. He nodded. Can I come in? We sat at the kitchen table for several minutes. Neither of us spoke. Finally, he took a deep breath. I owe you an apology. I looked at him in disbelief. For what? For believing her. My eyes filled with tears. I should have asked questions years ago. He rubbed his hands together. Every time you two argued, Brooke always called first. I nodded. I believed whoever spoke first. He looked ashamed. I never realized you stopped defending yourself because you were exhausted. That sentence hit harder than I expected. Because it was true. Eventually, you stop trying to explain yourself to people who have already decided you're wrong. Dad reached into his jacket pocket. I found something. He slid a small envelope across the table. Inside were old bank statements. I frowned. What are these? I was cleaning your mother's filing cabinet. I looked closer. Several withdrawals. Different dates. Different years. Always small amounts. Always from family gatherings. Then I noticed something. Every withdrawal happened when Brooke had been around. My heartbeat quickened. Dad. He nodded slowly. I think this wasn't the first time. The room suddenly felt colder. For years, everyone believed Brooke occasionally borrowed money. But these statements suggested something much darker. A pattern. A lifetime of taking from people who trusted her. Dad looked out the window. Your mother knew. What? I don't think she had proof. He sighed. But she always kept her purse locked whenever Brooke visited. I stared at him. Why didn't she say anything? He smiled sadly. She hoped Brooke would change. Exactly what I had hoped. Exactly what everyone hoped. And hope, without accountability, changes nothing. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Mom, about all the little moments that suddenly made sense. Why she'd quietly counted cash after family dinners. Why she'd always reminded me to keep my wallet close. Why she'd once whispered, "Some people mistake kindness for permission." Back then, I hadn't understood. Now, I understood perfectly. The following Monday, my attorney called again. This case just became much bigger. My stomach tightened. What happened? The prosecutor contacted me. And they've discovered 2 previous complaints involving unauthorized card use. I froze. Against Brooke? Yes. Neither case had moved forward. One relative decided not to press charges. Another believed it was a misunderstanding, which meant every time Brooke escaped consequences, she became bolder, until she finally stole from the one person she believed would never fight back, me. Meanwhile, life at home slowly improved. Emma joined the school art club. Noah started playing soccer. Little by little, their smiles became genuine again. One evening, Noah looked up from his homework. Mom? Yeah? If someone is mean because they're family, I looked at him. Do we still have to love them? Children ask impossible questions. I thought carefully before answering. You can love someone, I said softly, and still decide they aren't safe enough to be close. He considered that. So we don't hate Aunt Brooke. I shook my head. No. What do we do then? We let her live with the choices she made. He smiled. That sounds harder. It is, but it's healthier. A few days later, something unexpected happened. There was another knock at my door. This time, it was Madison, Brooke's daughter. She stood there holding a backpack. Her eyes were red from crying. I know Mom isn't here. She nodded. I came alone. I invited her inside. She sat nervously on the couch. After several minutes, she whispered, I need to tell you something. I waited. The trip, she said quietly, was never supposed to include Emma and Noah. I felt my chest tighten. What do you mean? Mom told me before we left that if there wasn't enough room, she looked down. She'd tell your kids. Next time. The exact words. Planned. Rehearsed. Not spontaneous. Calculated. Madison started crying. I thought she was joking. I reached for a tissue and handed it to her. She wiped her eyes. I should have said something. I gently shook my head. You were a child. She looked at me. I don't want to become like her. Those words sounded painfully familiar, almost identical to what Emma had said days earlier. Different mothers, different homes, the same fear. I smiled sadly. The fact that you're worried about becoming like her, I said quietly, means you're already choosing a different path. Madison broke down completely. For the first time, I didn't see Brooke's daughter. I saw another child hurt by the same woman who had hurt the rest of us. If there's one thing I've learned about lies, it's this. A lie can survive for years, as long as everyone is willing to protect it. But the moment one person stops pretending, everything begins to fall apart. After Madison left my house that afternoon, I sat in silence for a long time. Not because I was shocked anymore. I wasn't. The shock had already passed. What remained was something heavier. Grief. Not just for the sister I had lost, but for the childhood we never really had. I kept remembering little moments that suddenly looked different. The birthday money Grandma gave me that mysteriously disappeared. The necklace Mom thought she had misplaced. The missing cash from Dad's wallet that everyone blamed on bad memory. For years, every missing thing had been explained away. Now those explanations no longer felt believable. 3 days later, my attorney called. There's been another development. What happened? The prosecutor wants to meet with you. I drove to the courthouse that afternoon. The assistant district attorney greeted me with a firm handshake. She spread several folders across the table. We've interviewed resort employees. I nodded. We've also interviewed your niece. Madison, the prosecutor looked directly at me. Her statement matches yours almost perfectly. A weight lifted off my shoulders. Not because I wanted Brooke to get into more trouble, but because someone had finally confirmed I wasn't imagining any of it. For years, Brooke had convinced people that I exaggerated, that I was too emotional, too sensitive. Now, facts were speaking louder than opinions. Then the prosecutor slid another folder toward me. We also found something else. Inside were photographs from the resort's security cameras. One image showed Brooke reaching into my open handbag while I was kneeling beside Noah near the lake. Another showed her walking directly to the ATM. Another showed her smiling while paying for souvenirs. The timestamps were only minutes apart. There was no room left for excuses. No misunderstanding. No accident. Just choice after choice after choice. A week later, Dad called. Family dinner on Sunday. I hesitated. I don't think that's a good idea. It isn't really dinner. What is it? He sighed deeply. It's time everyone hears the truth. Sunday afternoon felt strangely quiet. When I arrived at Dad's house, nearly everyone was already there. My uncle, 2 aunts, several cousins, even relatives I hadn't seen in years. The atmosphere felt heavy. No one laughed. No one made small talk. Then Brooke walked in. She froze the moment she saw me. For a split second, I saw panic in her eyes. Then she quickly replaced it with confidence. She smiled as though nothing had happened. There she is. Nobody answered. That was unusual. Normally someone would rush to greet her. This time, silence greeted her instead. She looked around the room, confused. Dad stood up. I asked everyone here because this family has spent too many years pretending problems don't exist. Brooke laughed awkwardly. Dad, what is this? He ignored the question. Instead, he placed copies of the security photographs on the dining table. Nobody spoke. Brooke looked down. Her smile disappeared. What is this supposed to prove? Dad answered calmly. It proves you stole from your sister. Brooke folded her arms. No, it doesn't. Then Dad placed the printed bank statements beside the photographs. Years of unexplained withdrawals. Dates. Amounts. Patterns. The room became even quieter. My oldest uncle finally spoke. Brooke. His voice trembled. Did you steal from me too? She looked away. No answer. That silence became her answer. My aunt whispered, my wedding envelope. Another cousin slowly shook his head. My graduation money. One memory after another surfaced around the room. Not accusation. Realization. People weren't inventing stories. They were connecting dots that had been scattered for decades. Brooke suddenly slammed her hand on the table. This is ridiculous! She pointed directly at me. She's turning all of you against me. For years, that strategy had worked. Blame someone else. Become louder. Create enough confusion that nobody notices the facts. But this time, nobody interrupted. Nobody defended her. Dad simply looked at her. No, he spoke quietly. You did that yourself. Brooke's voice became sharper. So everyone believes her now? My uncle answered. We believe the evidence. Another cousin nodded. And the security cameras? Then my aunt quietly added, and the text messages. Brooke's eyes widened. What text messages? Dad looked disappointed. The ones your attorney had to disclose. For the first time, I saw genuine fear on Brooke's face. She hadn't realized the family knew. She thought the case was still private. She had no idea how much information had already become available through the legal process. Then something happened I never expected. Madison stood up. Her hands were shaking. She looked directly at her mother. You lied to me. Brooke blinked. Sweetheart. No. Madison's voice cracked. You told me Aunt Alina was selfish. She took a deep breath. But you stole from her? The room remained silent. You told me family should always stick together. Tears rolled down Madison's cheeks. But you treated your own nieces and nephew like they didn't matter. Brooke reached toward her. Madison stepped backward. I don't want to learn how to become you. Those words hit the room like thunder. Brooke stood completely still. She had lost arguments before. She had lost friendships before. But hearing her own daughter reject the example she had set, that was different. She looked around desperately, searching for someone. Anyone. Someone to defend her. No one did. Dad finally spoke again. I spent years making excuses for you. His eyes filled with tears. I won't do it anymore. He slowly removed a spare house key from his pocket. The key to my house. He placed it on the table. You won't need this anymore. Brooke stared at the key. Then at Dad? You can't be serious. I am. For a long moment, nobody moved. Finally, Brooke grabbed her purse. She looked directly at me. This is all your fault. I met her eyes calmly. No, I answered softly. It's the result of your choices. She wanted me to argue, to yell, to cry, to lose control. Instead, I stayed calm, and somehow that seemed to upset her even more. Without another word, she walked toward the front door.